Thank you for joining today's session brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association and our accredited partner, Frederick Lucas of Prima Resource. My name is Rupelin and I will be supporting this session with Prima. Today's webinar will cover how to design a compensation plan that works for sales. Your host today is Frederick Lucas, founder of Prima Resource, a sales growth consulting company. Frederick has been in business for over 20 years as an executive and entrepreneur with extensive experience across multiple industries. In 2007, Frederick founded Prima Resource after becoming frustrated with the lack of accountability in his own company sales team. Since then, he has helped more than 250 companies transform their sales by delivering results through sustainable growth, increased profitability, and efficiency at sales teams development. Prima Resource provides sales growth expertise through its proprietary methodology, which begins with diagnosing the root cause of underperformance and then designing strategic interventions that address these issues head on. This proven approach is based on three key pillars: strategy-driven improvement, process optimization, and performance management. Now, just for some quick housekeeping rules for today, please note that all of today's attendees should be placed on mute for the duration of the webinar, and that you may ask questions or make comments using the chat function in your Zoom dashboard. They will be addressed at the end of the session during the Q&A. Now, without further ado, I'll hand it right over to Frederick to start.
Well, thank you very much, Rupelin. So very happy to be here with you today. So very excited about this webinar. It's going to be an intensive webinar. I've got lots I want to share with you. Not the first webinar I do on compensation, but certainly the most comprehensive. So there's a lot of new stuff. If some of you attended some of my previous webinars, and a lot happened since I last delivered a session on compensation. So there's going to be a Q&A section at the end. So if you have some questions, you can post your question in the chat throughout the webinar or wait until the end. So both is acceptable, and certainly more than acceptable. I should say welcome. So I always love when questions are asked and everybody is kind of engaged in what's going on. So we're going to start the webinar today by covering really the method we've developed to be able to design a compensation plan, a sales compensation plan that actually works. And compensation plan can create a lot of headaches, and that's certainly what sales leaders and business owners and HR leaders that I'm speaking with on a weekly basis share with me when it comes to the compensation plan. There always seems to be some level of dissatisfaction in the sales organization towards the compensation plan. So today I want to show that method we've developed over the last decade, and what are those key components? What are those levers that can enable you to create a great and exceptional compensation plan? So I'll be sharing that. I'll be sharing the steps. I'll be sharing the levers. There's even going to be a quick assessment we're going to do in just a few moments that's going to help you gain some perspective and try to understand where your compensation plan currently lands versus what's available out there versus your competition, because compensation is a strategic decision, a strategic lever. So we need to think about compensation in a strategic manner. So having this assessment and understanding where you fall certainly will help gain that perspective and then gain some insights. And that's I would say the main goal. The one thing I hope everybody gets out of the webinar today is some actionable insights on how you can optimize your compensation plan. So I'll be sharing some tips, very practical advice that I've collected, helping and consulting with hundreds of organizations around their compensation plan. Then we're going to talk about the most common mistakes. So there are some pitfalls, some things that you want to avoid when you're designing your compensation plan. We're not going to talk about every mistake, but I'll talk about the common ones, the recurring ones. So we'll certainly spend some time on that. And then we'll talk about how to get started and actually stay until the end, because we'll have an exclusive offer for people attending this webinar. And this is only for CPSA attendees to this webinar. So at the end, I'll be talking about what we've put together and what we can offer you guys to help you get started with either redesigning your compensation plan or optimizing what you currently have in place. So let's go with this quick assessment. Now, when we're thinking about compensation plan and we're thinking about creating a sales compensation structure that is going to work, that is going to be impactful, there are three outcomes that we're looking for. And the first outcome is salespeople excitement. Your salespeople should be excited when they think about their compensation plan. Okay, they should feel motivated. So what I'd like for you guys to think is the following question, and I'll move myself so you can actually see the question. So I want everybody to think, how do our salespeople feel about their sales compensation plan? Do they feel discontent? And I'm guessing probably most of you are not at the discontent level. Probably most of you are at the satisfied level. So the salespeople are kind of satisfied. Plan's not great. It's not perfect. It's okay. Some, maybe, 10, 20, 30% of the salespeople may feel dissatisfaction, but there's some level of satisfaction. It's a mixed bag. The third level is salespeople are happy. And the dark green level is the level at which salespeople are not only happy, they're fulfilled. There's alignment between their personal goal and the compensation plan. They have a clear vision and a clear understanding that their compensation plan, and they know that, okay? They know how their compensation plan is going to help them reach their personal goals. And I often say that. I say, when you give a sales job to someone, you're giving them a vehicle to reach their personal goals. So there should be alignment between personal goals and your compensation plan. And your salespeople should understand how both are connected and how the comp plan is going to help them reach those personal goals they have. And when I say personal goals, I don't mean, a $2 million quota or getting referrals. Those are business goals. I really mean personal goals, like buying a new car or buying a house or changing the kitchen or putting money away for retirement or sending the kids to private school, that kind of stuff. Okay, so your compensation plan should help your salespeople achieve that, and they need to see the connection, and that's the dark green level. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where are you at? How do your salespeople feel about their compensation plan? So that's question number one. So are you in the red zone, the yellow zone, the green zone, or the dark green zone? The second outcome that your compensation plan should achieve is design simplicity. Your plan should be simple to understand, simple to remember, and also simple to do the math. Salespeople need to be able to easily calculate how much money they're going to make on that next sale. So again, rate how understandable is our sales compensation plan right now? So how understandable is your compensation plan, sales compensation plan right now? Is it heavy, hard to understand? That would be the red zone. Is it intelligible? This means people understand it, but it's still complex, okay? They get it, but they need explanation, and they're gonna go back because they forget stuff. And if you have some of your reps that are checking out, their commission reports, they're gonna circle back with some question because, again, with the explanation makes sense, but it has that complexity. The next level, the green level, is it's coherent. It's coherent between the different roles, okay? So there's an architecture between roles, and you've matched how the different jobs in your sales organization should be paid, and that makes sense. It's coherent with one another. You don't have an inside sales making as much as an account executive, for example, or an account manager making more than a hunter. And we'll talk more about that. So you don't have those kind of situation. And the dark green level is the effortless level. So your plan is so understandable and memorable and easy to run the math that it's effortless for salespeople to know how much money they're going to make on that next sale or that sale that they just closed. So that would be the dark green level. And the third outcome we're trying to create with a impactful sales compensation plan is deep fit. Now, we want the compensation plan to fit the job or the jobs if you have several roles within your sales organization. We'll talk some more about that. But you also want the plan to fit the economics. So it needs to make sense financially, okay? And we'll talk also about financial pro forma in a few minutes. So the question is, how tailored is our sales compensation plan to the job if you have just one sales role in your sales organization, or jobs and economics? So is it unsuited? We've got something, but it doesn't match the role. Is it, and that would be the red zone. Is it fixed? Meaning there are some flaws in the plan, but we were able to put some band-aids and we patched the compensation plan, so it's kind of fixed. It holds together, and it kind of we kind of have something in place and it's holding up. Is it aligned? So we have alignment with the job, we have alignment with the economics, and that would be the green. And then the dark green is it's not only aligned, it's neat. We look at the compensation plan, and it was so it fits so well that our plan is just neat. So where are you at on that scale? Are you red zone, yellow zone, green zone, or dark green zone? So those are the three questions to kind of assess where you're at in terms of your compensation plan. Now, let's look at this information differently. If most of the question or all you were in the red zone, you're on the level one, you're on the broken level. So your sales compensation plan needs a big overhaul. It needs to be redesigned because it's broken. And what happens at the broken level is most leaders, most companies that have a broken sales plan are not even aware that it's broken, okay? They're not even conscious of that. That's why there's that ignorance level or that ignorance line where they don't have this awareness. And maybe I should call it the awareness line, but you get the idea. So the plan is broken. And this is not where most companies we work with, that's not the level or the category they fall into, because there's this unawareness. So if you had a lot of red in your assessment and you're on this webinar, it's good. You're on your way to the next level, the yellow zone, because at least you have awareness. You have this awareness that it's broken and it's not working and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And maybe your salespeople aren't motivated, or they're complacent, or you're not making money while your salespeople are making a lot of money. So those are usually, indications that you might have something that is broken. The yellow level, which is where that's the category, the level in which most companies fall into, is the leaking level. So the leaking level is you have a compensation plan in place, but you have this leakage going on. The plan is costing you money. Now, the first source of leakage is you created some exceptions. So you have some salespeople that have a higher base salary than others. And you can rationalize it, I'm sure, but in the end, those salespeople were probably better at negotiating their compensation with you, and you started kind of creating those exceptions, or you're paying more on the commission side, on the variable side, on the bonus side. And maybe it's a salesperson or a few salespeople in your team that have been grandfathered. They've been with you for so long. You didn't want to upset them and change the plan, so you grandfathered their plan. And over the years, it creates this leakage of money essentially in the compensation plan. The other, so those are two main sources of leakage you can have. The other source is overall you're paying too much or too little. We'll talk more about that. So that's the second level. That's the yellow zone, and this is where most companies we find fall into. The next level is the standard level. So the companies that have built awareness around leakage, they've noticed there was leakage. They were tired of managing conflicts, and salespeople talk and they're going to share their compensation plan together. Okay, they're going to compare notes. So at some point you need to create a standard. So standardizing the compensation plan is the green zone, and some companies fall into that zone. They've done a good job of creating that architecture and benchmarking their compensation plan and creating that coherence in the compensation. So they're at the standard level. And the danger there is you have a good plan. It's good enough. It could be better, but again, changing the compensation plan is usually something that has an impact on the sales team. Whenever you play in your salespeople, well, anyone's pocket, it has an impact, even if it's for the better. So a lot of companies stay stuck at the standardized or the standard level because they don't want to make changes. They don't want to upset the apple cart. So it could be better, but they kind of stay there. And the danger there is you're not getting the most out of the dollars you spent on compensation, the dollars you spent on your sales organization. You're leaving money on the table. You're leaving performance aside as a result of having something that is good enough, but is not elite. And the dark green level is really the elite level. This is the level at which you have a sales compensation plan that sets you apart from the competition. And in this type of job market, this is a great tool for attracting, but also retaining talent. But not only talent, retaining A players, retaining top salespeople. And when you think and look at the data on 2.2 million salespeople assessed, and you see that there's only 6% of salespeople that are elite, okay? You need an elite compensation plan to be able to attract them and retain them in your sales organization. So that helps you understand where you're at and where you fall. So what I'd like from everybody now that you've conducted the assessment is in the chat right now, open the chat and just drop the level at which you're at. So are you at the broken level, the leaking level, the standard level, or the elite level? I just want to get kind of perspective. I just want to get a feel for where the group is at. So I see a lot of leaking. So this is certainly consistent with what we are seeing. Most companies fall into that leaking level. I've got one standard, which also makes sense. Companies are at the standard level, and a few are at the elite. That's the top 1% that are at the elite level. Some are kind of in between the leaking and standard. So, okay, good. Nobody's at the broken level. So, or the people at the broken level didn't type it into the chat, which is fine, okay? Because certainly I didn't get an answer from everyone. So, right now, from what I see a lot of leaking, but if I assume that everybody that didn't drop something into the chat was at the broken level, then we have way more companies right now that are at the broken level. So, okay, very good. So let's talk about our sales compensation model. Let's talk about the model we use to create an impactful compensation plan. And to do that, I'll switch screen for just a quick second here. And there we go. So the first thing we want to create the promise that we want to deliver on when we create a sales compensation plan is to have an impactful comp plan. And to create that impactful comp plan, I've shared what are the outcomes that support that. So we need to drive salespeople excitement. So I've talked about that just a few minutes ago. So it needs to be exciting to salespeople. Then it needs to have design simplicity. So that's the second outcome that's going to create an impactful compensation plan. And then the third outcome is deep fit. So we want deep fit with the job. We want deep fit with the economics. Now, the three levers that enable the creation of such a compensation plan is, number one, people. And more specifically, salespeople. But to create a great compensation plan, you need to understand people. You need to understand what motivates them, what gets them up in the morning. And this means a couple of things. It means you need to understand, are my salespeople more extrinsically motivated or intrinsically motivated? I need to understand what are their personal goals. And I also need to understand that motivation is a moving target, and that what motivates someone might be very different to what's going to motivate the next salesperson in my organization. So having just one plan that satisfies everyone is utopia. Okay, and we'll talk about how to design compensation plan with different options. That's a great way to be able to adapt to the motivation aspect and how people, and more specifically, how salespeople are motivated. So the first lever is understanding your salespeople, understanding as individual what's behind and what's driving them and what's motivating them and what's getting them excited. The second lever is the financial one. So you need to understand how much should a salesperson sell for your company, and if they sell that, how much they should earn. So those are kind of the two basic variables, and we'll circle to that in a few minutes, a little bit later on when we'll talk about the steps to design a great compensation plan. But you need to understand the financial, you need to understand the impact of that. We've talked about economics, financial, same thing here. And the third lever is the job. What's the job exactly? What are the drivers? What does it do? What's the role? And we'll talk about that some more. So this is really the model we've developed when we're thinking about creating that impactful compensation plan. Now, let's talk about the steps. What are the steps that you need to go through to design a great compensation plan? So we'll talk about the steps. So it's a 4-step process. And again, I'll go back to drawing for just a quick second. So step number 1 is understand. Understand. So there are several things that you want to understand. You want to understand what the role actually is. You want to understand what it covers in the sales process. You want to understand the level of effort. You want to understand the financial pro forma. You want to understand your sales model. So those are all things you want to understand when designing your compensation plan. And we'll talk some more about each of those elements of the understand step. I'm just giving you an overview of the 4 steps you need to go through, and then we'll dive kind of a little bit deeper into each step, okay? The second one is the design step. So you're actually designing your sales compensation plan. The third step is to simulate. So you're modeling, you're simulating the impact of your compensation plan. That's step number 3. And step number 4, which is probably the most important step in the process and the one that is the most often neglected, is the rollout. How you're going to roll out your new sales compensation plan. And that has a big impact on the success and the impact your sales compensation plan is going to have. So let's take each of those steps and kind of dive deeper to understand those 4 steps to creating a great compensation plan, a compensation plan that has impact. So going back to my slides. So the first thing you need to understand is, what's the actual role that we're compensating? And I certainly see a lot of confusion between titles and roles. And at its most basic level in the sales organization, there are 3 roles. The first one is a sales role. A sales role is where you need to go out and you have some kind of quota, and you need to carry conversation with prospects and clients to sell. You have to execute on some kind of sales process, and you need to deliver on that quota. So that's the first role, that's the sales role. Now, the sales role can come in different flavors. You can have more of an account manager role. You can have more of a hunter role. We'll talk about that at the next slide, actually. The second role is a sales management role. A sales management role is when you have salespeople reporting to you. Now, where a lot of the confusion is created is when you have salespeople that have a sales manager title. So they have a title where they're called a sales manager or a regional sales manager or a territory sales manager. But when you look at what they actually do, you look at their role, although there's manager in their title, it's actually a sales role. Okay. And again, I'm seeing a lot of confusion around that, where people are benchmarking against other sales manager, but they're benchmarking against sales manager that are actually in a management position and having salespeople reporting to them. Very different roles, very different skills, competencies. So it changes everything. So sales management, you have salespeople reporting to you. And then sales leadership, which is usually a sales VP role, you have sales manager reporting to you. And again, I see salespeople all the time with a VP of sales title, but really when you look at their actual role, it's a sales role. So the first thing to understand is what's the actual role of the people we're trying to design a compensation plan for. Is it a sales role? Is it a role where they have salespeople reporting to them? Or is it a role where they have sales managers reporting to them? We can add a fourth role, which is someone that is in sales, but in a non-sales role, okay? So you might have a sales coordinator, or you might have a sales architect, or somebody technical that kind of supports the salesperson during the process. They're not the one driving the entire process. They're just responsible for the more technical piece in the sales process. So that could be a fourth role of sales, but non-sales, not as a salesperson, okay? So first thing to understand, what are the different roles in the sales organization? What are the different roles I'm trying to design a compensation plan for? The next thing to understand is the role or the roles in the sales organization. What are we compensating for? And to explain that clearly, I'm going to talk a little bit about baseline selling. That's the methodology we use when we train sales organization. This is also the methodology we use when we design a sales process. And what I'll do is I'll flip again to drawing. It's going to help understand the concept a little better. So you have the baseball diamond here. You have first base, second base, third base, and then you're running home. And pardon the poor drawing skills here. First step, getting to first base, is the prospecting. So it's doing cold calls, it's asking for referrals, it's identifying opportunity inside existing clients. So that's the prospecting. And what salespeople are asked to do there is to get the first base, is to get a first base meeting, which is usually some kind of discovery call. And between first and second base, this is where you lead the discovery. So understanding the need and the compelling reason to buy. And this is where you're building the relationship and the trust, and you're increasing your prospects' urgency. This happens between first and second base. Then between second and third, this is where you qualify. So is there money, how the decision will be made, when it's going to be made, based on what criteria, and all the other qualification criteria and checklist items you have. This happens between second and third base. And then third base to home. So you're running home, and usually there are two steps here. Closable, this is where you do your presentation. This is where you share the quote, and then scoring. So those are the steps we have in baseline selling when we talk about the sales process. This is how we approach it. Now, what you need to understand here is, okay, and I said that earlier, within a sales role, you've got different flavors. So the flavor, is it an account executive that's going to have to do all the steps in the process, a salesperson that will need to prospect, do the discovery, qualify, close, and then score the sale? Or is it a role where it's partial? Maybe it's more an account manager role, or maybe it's more a channel sales role. So they have to do the baseball diamond, but they have to do it with VARs or retailers or distributors. So it's channel sales. Or is it more a top of the funnel role, like a BDR role? So a BDR role, an SDR role, so a business development representative or a sales development representative will be on the phone and will do early calls and then book appointments for your sales team. So that's a BDR role, and they're only covering a portion of the sales process. Or maybe it's more a bottom of the funnel role where you have this sales architect, or you have this technical salesperson that is really there to be more technical and support the salesperson that needs to execute the entire process. So those two salespeople won't be compensated, won't have the same structure. So you need to understand what's the flavor of my role? What portion, if it's not all the steps, do I expect the salesperson or the salespeople in my organization for which I'm designing a compensation plan to execute on? So that's the second thing on the understand. Then you need to understand the level of effort. A great sales compensation plan is going to reward effort. So a hunting role is harder, much harder than an account management role. So, and we'll see that later. As a result, a hunter should make more money than an account manager because it's a much harder job. There are a lot more account managers out there than there are hunters, especially good ones out there. Okay, so a lot harder if you're starting with zero. You have no existing clients and you have to build your business from scratch. It's a much harder assignment than if you're giving $1 million of existing business to your salespeople when they start with your company. Is it more inbound or outbound? So let's say it's a BDR role, a top of the funnel. It's easier to call on inbound leads than it is to call on outbound leads. So again, the level of effort is going to be greater for an outbound role than an inbound role. The third element to assess the level of effort is it new or existing? And when we're thinking about new or existing, think of territory. If it's a brand new territory, we haven't sold in that region before, then it's a much tougher assignment than a territory where your company has been present for the last 20 years. If I'm in a new territory and I need to go against an established competitor, much harder assignment. So again, the effort level is going to be greater. So it could be new or existing territory, it could be new or existing product. So you have this salesperson and you're giving him or her a brand new product to sell or a new product line. It's going to be a harder assignment. There's no track record. And then new or existing technology, so kind of goes with the product side. So is it new or is it existing? And then the other thing to think about when you're trying to assess the level of effort is, are we unknown or recognized? Again, if our brand is recognized, if we're a leader, it's going to be an easier sell than if we're the underdog or we're unknown, or I could even say damage. I see a lot of clients, they assign territory and they had bad representation. That territory was neglected. There's negative inertia to be able to revert before being able to start making some sales. That's a much tougher assignment, requires a lot more effort from the salesperson when the company, the brand is unknown, or the clients were neglected or had bad experiences with your company. So you need to have that in mind. You need to assess what's that level of effort looking like for the different sales role. And even inside a same role, let's say you have only one role as a salesperson in your company, well, you need to think, what are the different degrees or flavors of that role depending on the variables I've just shared. Then you need to understand the financial pro forma. And for this one, you can keep it pretty simple. And again, I'll go to drawing. So what you need to think about when you're thinking about the economics is, okay, how much do I expect a salesperson to sell? Okay, and you can do that in terms of dollar figures, so in terms of revenue or in terms of gross margin. I typically, and again, it depends, it's not a universal rule, but I tend to prefer gross margin as opposed to just revenue. So let's say a salesperson is supposed to generate $1 million in sales. Well, for that $1 million, how much should that salesperson make? So should they be making 50K? Should they be making 100K? Or should it be 250? And the answer is going to depend on different things. It's going to depend on your industry. Okay, $1 million in OEM is usually not a big quota. Okay, so we're going to be more towards the 50K, but $1 million in consulting services, that's a huge quota, and we're going to probably pay more towards the 250K. So depending on your industry, that's certainly one thing that's going to impact. And of course, you know, what product or service or a solution you sell. And I see a lot of companies trying to benchmark and how much should we pay in our industry. And it's a great information to have, but you also need to be cautious about that because it's also going to depend on what's your business model. Okay. And are you a premium solution or product? Are you price driven? So what's your price positioning in the market? And what is your business model? So you may have a different business model than your competition. Okay. And you also need to talk about the positioning and the other effort variables I shared earlier. But when you think about that role and the flavor, and you think about the effort level for that to get that $1 million, and I'm saying $1 million, it might be 2, it might be 5. You need to determine what's that number. And to determine that number, look at what your absolute best salespeople are able to achieve and take 80% of that. That's a rule of thumb you can use. Or if you don't have a track record, take what the owner is selling and take 80% of that. So if the owner is selling, they're selling 5 million, then your expectation when your salespeople are fully ramped up should be 4 million. Okay. And then for that 4 million in business, how much should the salesperson be making? So those are the 2 basic variables you need to determine to go into the design phase and be able to design a sales compensation plan that is actually going to work. And then what's your sales model? So you need to understand that. So let's say I have $1 million in sale. So how am I expecting my salespeople to make that $1 million? So let's say $1 million. So the model could be they're going to do 1 200K sale and they're going to do 1 a year. And then they're going to make 4 $100,000 sale and they're going to do 1 of those each quarter. And then they need to make 10 smaller 40K sale and they're going to do that monthly, except in December and July, because this is slower, but every other month, they're going to make 1 of those. And then what's the pipeline value I need to have?
and how many deals do I need to have in the pipeline? And then I've talked about the concept of first base meeting or discovery call. So how many first base meetings do my salespeople need? So let's say it's 2 calls a week. And that becomes my sales model. That becomes my recipe for success. That becomes the expectation. So I need to understand what is going to drive that $1 million and where is it going to come from? Is it 50 new, 50 existing client? Is it 20/80? Is it 100% new, 0 existing? So also understand what's that balance on where are those appointments? Where's that revenue going to come from? Okay, so we're done with the understand step. Now we're going to go into the design step. And for that, the best way to do it is just pull an Excel spreadsheet between you, if you're the owner, the sales leader, the HR leader. So have 2 or 3 people, key people that can help you design and start putting in some numbers. So what I usually do, and on the screen, you have a template, you have an example of what your Excel spreadsheet might look like, but I always start from scratch because I want it to be really customized and tailored and based on the company that I'm consulting with. And certainly here, talking about sales and gross margin, that makes sense for a manufacturing business. But if I'm sitting down with a software business, everything is MRR and AR. So the columns are going to look different based on the type of company I'm dealing with and what are their drivers. So it's just pulling out an Excel spreadsheet, starting to create some columns. Okay, what are those drivers? What do we want to pay on? How much? And starting to play with the options. And what you're seeing on the screen is actually one compensation plan, but different options. So option A, there's a lot of salary with not a whole lot of variable. And then B, it's about half and half. And then C, there's low base and a lot of variable. And as you can see on the other end, the total compensation plan, the number gets bigger, although the gross margin doesn't move as we're moving to the option number C, as we're lowering the base because we're rewarding risk. We're saying, you, Mr. or Miss Salesperson, you're taking more risk by having a lower base salary. We're rewarding you with more total compensation. You're going to make more for the same amount of sale or gross margin because you're taking more risk. And vice versa for the salesperson that goes with high base salary, the company is taking risk. So as a result, for the same amount of sale, you're going to make less. So that's the idea with the different options. And you want to create, you want to reward the risk. Now, again, just empty spreadsheet. You can use this template aside and start designing your compensation plan. Now, to determine how much you need to pay, I gave some of those answers. You need to understand, so, should I pay 100 or 150? Well, you need to understand how easy or hard is the position. How much is the average sale? Is it a 3-figure sale or is it a 6-figure sale? Are the salespeople going to be self-managed, meaning there's no sales manager? I'll probably need some stronger salespeople. Or is there a sales manager that's going to help them succeed? Then I don't need salespeople that are as strong because there's a sales manager there showing them how to gain success. Is it remote or office, physical or virtual? And also, how much is the competition paying is another important variable. Now, the other design element, and the question I get often is, what's that balance between base salary and variable compensation? Well, variable will reward risk, will increase motivation and retain top players. So our data shows that salespeople stay longer when they're on a full commission plan than when they have a high base salary. So paying on a full commission plan actually helps retain your top salespeople. A base salary may also be the right thing to do. A higher base salary may be the thing to do to bring more stability. Let's say you have a long sales cycle, you'll want more base salary. Let's say you have a new territory or a new product, will increase the base salary. So it's going to bring more stability, it's going to mitigate risk, and it's going to help attract talent. And that's kind of the weird thing. A high base salary is going to attract top talent, but you need to have a system to be able to move them from a high base salary in year one to a plan that will have higher variable as they're ramping up and as they're gaining experience. So a lot of salespeople are insecure when there's a lot of variable in the compensation plan, but as they're gaining traction and getting success with their company, with your company, they're actually going to be looking for more variable. So you want to transition them, and this is where a guaranteed draw can be an answer and a good way to design your compensation plan and create that transition between more fixed compensation to more variable, and you kind of get the best of both world when you design the compensation this way. And this is certainly one way to do it. The other way is the option, which I've shown previously in the Excel sheet. Now, the third step is simulate. So you want to simulate the impact of your comp plan on your current team, but also on your upgraded team. So if you had better salespeople, if you make a next great hire that is able to crush it, what would your compensation plan look like? And then the last step is the rollout. As I said, it's the most important step. So take the time to explain the new plan to your salespeople, have some visual put together, have some simulation of how much they would have made and how much they could make, show them how they can make more with the new compensation plan. So that's an important thing. If you're changing your compensation plan, it's probably because you want to drive new behavior. So how can they make more with the new compensation plan? This is a great way to sell your team on the new compensation plan. Now, let's talk about what are the common mistakes that I see in compensation plan design. Well, the first three mistakes is poor understanding. They have to do with step number one. So people are misunderstanding the role. So they confuse titles with roles. They're changing the definition. People have different understanding of the role. So that's error number one. Error number two, mistake number two, paying too little or too much. So you're paying too little versus too much versus the amount of effort or versus the market. If you're paying too little, you'll have some challenges attracting talent and retaining talent. If you're paying too much, you will have some complacency issues. And a lot of people say, oh, really? Some salespeople are paid too much? Yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time. A common example is when you're paying a big commission to a rep on repeat business, and the only reason they're driving so much revenue is they've been with your company for 15 years and they inherited all the house accounts. So they're not growing the business, they're just managing a big book of existing business, and you're paying a huge commission for that. You're paying too much, and usually those salespeople are complacent and they're not helping you grow. So that's a very common example of paying too much. You're selecting the wrong drivers. And what I mean by that is when you're designing the compensation plan, you want to make sure you're paying on stuff the salesperson controls. So that's why I don't like paying on net margin, because there's a lot of things happening that is out of the control of the salesperson that determines the net profit. For a BDR role, I don't like paying on revenue because they don't control. They rely on someone closing the sale. So again, you need to select the right drivers for your sales compensation plan. You need to have that understanding. The next series of mistakes have to do with poor design. You're overlooking some design principles, like sales is an individual sport. A lot of companies come to me and talk about, well, should I have like a team bonus? You can have a team component, but you need to reward the salesperson performance. The salesperson doesn't want to have the feeling that they should be making a lot more, but they're not, because it's being shared with other people on the team that are dragging. Okay, so that's certainly one design principle. The other one is confusing revenue with growth. Okay, again, you shouldn't pay the same percentage of commission on repeat business versus new business. Yeah, $1 of repeat is the same dollar for you in new, but the new dollar of growth is actually a lot harder. It takes more effort to be able to get. So don't confuse revenue with growth. You might have a salesperson doing 4 million in revenue, but a salesperson that started their territory from scratch and brought it from 0 to 400,000. 400,000 is not a lot of revenue compared to the 4 million, but it's a lot of growth. That's what you want to reward. And then make sure you're not rewarding behaviors over results. So some are talking about, well, maybe I should reward based on the number of discovery call or referrals. No, those are for other types of contest. You want to build contest and other kind of incentive plans, not compensation plan to reward behavior. You want to put more emphasis on results, and then capping the compensation. This is the #1 reason why top salespeople leave companies, is because the company capped the compensation. So salespeople need to have this vision. They need to know it's possible to make more. So you need to be able to build that hope into that compensation plan where they can see, how they're going to make more. And of course, they need to sell more to be able to make more. So you're winning in the equation, but don't cap the compensation. Don't let your discomfort or your money issues or perspective get in the way of designing a great compensation plan. Then over-simulating also creates a lot of mistake. You're not considering the lifetime customer value. You're only considering how much the customer is going to bring year one. But if you have repeat business, the value of that customer is greater over time. So you may pay 10% year one, but only 1% on the other years. So that's a lot more, that's more profit and less money than paying 7% every year. So look at the lifetime customer value. Don't only consider your existing rep. What would happen if you would go out and get a great salesperson that could sell a lot more than your existing rep? What would the compensation look like? And the other mistake is considering only margin, but not risk and cost. A lot of companies tend to decrease the commission as salespeople sell more. You want to do the opposite. You want to give them more money because they've covered their risk, they've covered their cost. What's expensive for a company is the initial 0 to, and it depends, it might be 200, 300, $500,000. It's that initial zone where you're paying a salary, you're paying for ramp up, but they're not covering for that compensation. This is where your risk is at. So you can afford to pay more to top salespeople to sell even more because you've covered your risk there, and they've covered their share of the fixed expenses in the business. So it's counterintuitive, but a common mistake I see. And then the poor rollout, lack of preparation, not meeting reps one-to-one, and not showing how to make more. Keep in mind your compensation plan will not fix poor willingness. It will not fix poor sales management. It will not fix a poorly designed structure in your organization. It won't compensate for a strategy that sucks. and it won't compensate for the lack of skills and tactical competencies or the weak DNA of your salespeople. I see companies coming to me and they want to design a plan that is going to get their salespeople to prospect, but the entire team has call reluctance. Well, it doesn't matter how you pay them until you address the call reluctance. The compensation plan isn't gonna change anything. Same for lack of willingness, or same for salespeople that need to be coached. You can put a lot of money in front of them, but if they don't know how to execute, then if they don't get the coaching, then the compensation plan is not going to do nothing. So you need to get your house in order for the compensation plan to be effective. So don't see compensation as a shortcut. I see it very often where there's this thinking that compensation is going to fix everything. No, you're just gonna create some discontent because you're changing the compensation plan, and your top salespeople will leave, and you'll still be stuck with those same issues that were unaddressed before changing the comp plan. So, and I know we're 2 minutes past 11:30, so only for people that attended the webinar today, we have a 30-minute free consultation we offer on your compensation plan. So if you want that 30-minute of free consultation, please write me an email, and I'll drop my email in the chat right now. And in the subject line, just write sales compensation plan, and I'll respond with an email, and you'll be able to book your 30-minute free session. Spots are limited, so make sure you send the email as soon as possible, and I'll be sharing my email just now in the chat. So Frederick with a C.Lucas at Prima Resource, no S at the end.com. So shoot me an email, and I'll respond with your 30-minute free consultation on your compensation plan. Now, I've seen everybody being very attentive and engaged. I'd like to take maybe 1 or 2 minutes to answer questions. I haven't seen any questions come through the chat. So if you want to type in your question right now through the chat, I'll stay and stick around for a few more minutes to answer question. If you have to leave, feel free to do so, certainly, and thank you for attending the webinar today. Rupalin, you might want to say a word while people are typing their question, and then I'll go through the chat as you do your message.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Frederick. Honestly, this information has been extremely valuable, and thank you so much for offering the 30-minute free consultation. And just as a reminder, Jade, also from Prima, has kindly put in additional information regarding the free consultation in the chat. So if you'd like, what you can do is you can click on the ... there in the chat next to the smiley face to save the chat, and in turn hold on to the information that you have here from Jade and Frederick. So again, thank you so much to Frederick and Jade for organizing today's webinar. This has been extremely useful information on such a valuable topic that is compensation to salespeople. So thank you again. And as Frederick had mentioned, we do have a few minutes. So if you'd like, please feel free to enter any questions into the chat function. And we'll be sure to get to those by the end of today's session here.
Certainly. So cool. So I don't think I'm not seeing question come through. There's Darren asking, will it be possible to get a copy of the presentation? Yes, we'll definitely share that. So that's going to be made available. Thank you, Peter, for your comments. So, well, thank you, Rupalin. This has been great. So love the experience. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll hopefully see you again very soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.